So in today's session as well, while we do the reading part C text, we'll be focusing on academic language. So you become familiar with the academic language as we go through the text and as we solve the multiple choice questions. So what is the format of the part C is you have two academic texts and you have a total of 16 questions. The major question types that you get are understanding the writer's opinion or attitude, okay, or purpose questions. These are the major type. Apart from that, you also get context clue questions and reference link questions. But the focus of today's session is going to be on understanding writer's viewpoint, understanding writer's opinion and attitude. So we are going to learn strategies in detail, and then we're going to practice those strategies with the similar type of questions. So it's very, very important for you to be able to understand and engage fully with the text. Just like listening part C, in reading part C as well, you need to fully understand the text. You need to at least understand 80% of the text to be able to correctly select the answer. You can't select your answer based on one word or one sentence that you have found within that particular text. So what is your approach is you first read the question, because the question tells you what you are supposed to do, what type of question it is. After reading the question, you go to that particular part of the text. You read the text and you try and identify the main idea of the overall text or the writer's viewpoint or the writer's opinion towards the given situation. It could be a disease condition, it could be a therapy or a treatment. So basically the sentence structure that you will have, or the paragraph structure I would say rather, would be argumentative. You would have each paragraph would have its own topic sentence, which would be the claim, and then the writer would go on to give further details about the claim he has made to prove the point that he's trying to make. So obviously, because these are written by the medical professionals or physicians or professors or researchers, this will be slightly different than the opinions you have in the newspaper editorial. In the newspaper editorial, what happens is the person associated with it excuse me, can give freely, can give his own opinion. But when it comes to the field of medicine, definitely one cannot just give their own opinion. They need to prove their opinion with facts and figures. So that is what something that makes reading part C slightly more complicated, because the writer would not straight away say that I agree with something or I disagree with something, but you have to read between the lines. You have to understand the inferential meaning. Okay, so the majority of the questions in reading part C would be reading for implied meaning or inferential meaning. So we're going to learn that strategy today. Now, I wanted to show you how the question paper would look like. So this is how it would be. You can see that you have text 1 here. You would have two texts in reading part C. So this is text 1 and the heading, which says umbilical cord blood banking in Australia, public good or private gain. So writer himself is questioning whether the UCB banking is beneficial for public or is it just for the private gain. And then you have the whole passage. You can see there will be around 5 to 6 paragraphs. The total length of one passage would be around 800 to 1000 words, and this is going to be purely academic language. And after that, you would have a set of questions. Right? So here you don't have one paragraph, one question, but you have the full passage. Why it is so is because it is indicating that the whole passage together is a single idea. In reading part B, you have 6 paragraphs, 6 questions. And each question is in different context and is completely different from the previous or the next question. Whereas in reading part C, although the answer of a particular paragraph, particular question comes from a particular paragraph, still the paragraph or the passage is given as in the single flow. This is to convey that the ideas mentioned in the different paragraphs are interconnected, and altogether, all those 5 or 6 paragraphs convey ideas related to one single topic. This is how it would look like. Now, for convenience, what I have done is I have, because it's going to be very, very difficult for you to go to and fro if it is, to be done online or on screen. So what I have done for you is I have got one question in one paragraph, but I wanted to make it very, very clear to all of you that in exam you would not have one question in one paragraph. You would have the whole passage together and a set of questions together. Okay? And the main idea there is to indicate that the passage or the paragraphs within that passage are interconnected. Do not look at them as a separate paragraph. It is in continuation of the ideas mentioned in the previous paragraph. So I'm going to get that version on the screen now, where I have got one paragraph and one question for all of you to be able to understand it easy. Okay. Now, the way in which you approach the test is you look at the question first. The question will tell you what are you supposed to do. Then you don't look at the answer choices at this stage. You straight away go to the paragraph. And then you try and answer the question. So as I mentioned earlier as well, we are going to also focus on vocabulary learning today, the academic vocabularies, which are very, very important for you to be able to perform well in the reading part C text. So the question here says, we are told that the author's main argument will be that, right? So it's clear that you don't have to read for the facts. You have to read for the author's main argument. So the one of the core skills that you need in the reading part C is to be able to differentiate between the fact and the argument. So here you can see, because it is a topic that is not familiar to each of the professions taking OET test. Maybe doctors would be more familiar with this, but if it was a physiotherapist or a pharmacist, they may not be very familiar about the concept of umbilical blood banking. So here they have mentioned what it is and why it is used. So allogenic hemopoietic stem cell transplantation, that's a form of treatment. So it says here it is a curative therapy for many disease conditions. And then they have given examples, mainly the disease conditions related to blood or blood-borne disorders. So what does this phrase mean? Or I'm sorry, what does this word mean? Allogenic? Any idea? Hemopoietic and allogenic. If you know the meanings of these words, please type in the chat box for me. Are you familiar with these two words? Allogenic and hemopoietic. What does that mean? The word allogenic? Hemopoietic is the immature blood cells, right? The blood cells which are not yet fully grown is hemopoietic. Um, yes. Allogenic refers to the blood from the same species, but not necessarily from the same with the same genetics. Yeah. So allogenic means taken from the same species, but dissimilar in terms of genetical structure. So maybe not taken every time from the family member or the friend or family member or anyone within the family having the same genetic structure, but having it from the same species, from human to human. So it is a stem cell transplantation where the immature blood cells can be converted into different types of blood cells, leukocytes, red blood cells, okay, and allogenic, which means it is taken from another human being, not necessarily from a family. So this is fact, right? The writer is, this is not writer's opinion. Writer is just explaining what is HSCT. It is a curative therapy. Then this is writer's viewpoint. Unfortunately, right? This is my opinion. I feel that it is unfortunate. Only 30% of patient in need will find a suitably matched related donor. So it is from the same species, but you still need to have matched donor. And the only option for other patients is to search unrelated volunteer donor. So what has happened because of that is over the past decade, these difficulties. So what are these difficulties? Finding a suitably matched related donor have led to umbilical cord blood being increasingly used as an alternative source of stem cells for HSCT in patients who do not have a matched bone marrow or blood donor. So what happens in this situation is the umbilical cord blood from whoever is the newborn baby within the family is preserved, and then that is used for anyone who requires HSCT treatment. And again, here you need a suitably matched donor. Now, what is author's main argument? Right? So here again, author has given some statistics, which is fact. Over 7,000 UCB transplants have now been performed, and 150 pediatric UCB transplants have been performed. And here you can see the writer says, in case of Australia, I argue that there is adequate social and medical justification for public UCB banks. However, okay, private UCB bank or banking is not similarly justified. So this, in this particular paragraph, the author has straight away given his argument, which is quite unusual for most of the academic journals. So this question, I would say, is comparatively easy because you can um, easily locate where the writer's arguments are given. And the argument is in two phases, right? One phase says that the public UCB banking is justified. There is adequate social and medical justification. But the similar justification is lacking for private UCB banking. So whenever you have to identify a writer's viewpoint or writer's opinion, what you do is you look at the You look at the arguments that the writer has made, and you think about the arguments, whether the arguments writer has made are in favor of something or are against something. So you have two arguments here. One is related to public UCB banking, and is it in favor or against? Is the writer in favor of public UCB banks or not? If in favor, type F. If it is against, type A. If you think the writer is neutral, type N. If you have to understand opinion or argument of someone, you'll have to first think whether they are arguing in favor of something or are they arguing against something. So here, what do you think? First, let us think about public UCB banks. Is the writer in favor of public UCB banks or against them? Type F if you think in favor, type A if you think against. Okay. So if the writer was against, um, why would he use the word there is adequate made social and medical justification? Justification is rational, yes, the logic or the reasoning. So the writer is saying that there is adequate medical and social justification, and he is not completely against UCB because you can see here a lot of positives he has given. He says that because it's difficult to find the suitably matched donor, the alternative source has been umbilical cord blood banking, and the writer has mentioned that they have successful outcome, isn't it? Successful UCB transplant programs have led to the establishment of two types of UCB banks. So he is not completely against UCB. But from this sentence, he has two opposite viewpoints for public bank and private bank. Why? Because you can see here the word however. Yes. So however is used when you have completely opposite idea. When I say I wanted to visit, my nanny today. However, uh, I won't be able to because I'm busy today. So two opposite ideas. So here also, however. So on one side, the argument is about public banks. So what do you think about public banks? Is the writer in favor of public banks or is he against public banks? In favor? Yeah. And about private banks? Is the writer in favor of private banks too? When the writer says is not similarly justified, is not similarly justified, and you have the word however, yes, and you have the word however, which means yeah. So writer is in favor of public banks, but he is kind of against private banks, isn't it? So this is hidden meaning. Okay? So whenever you are looking at reading part C questions, you will have to identify the hidden meaning because writer would not straight away say that I'm against something, right? Because this is not an editorial in the newspaper where you can freely give out your opinions. You have to back your opinions with facts and figures. So writer would indirectly give his or her opinion. Now look at the answer choices and find out which answer choice gives writer's opinion in terms of in favor of public banks and against private banks. And because you have the word however, you must have two opposite ideas there. Which option seems to be uh, an accurate summary of writer's opinion? You can be easily trapped with the answer choices. You will see that all the answer choices here seem to be correct at the first glance. Okay. For example, this advances in stem cell therapy will impact private and public banks. So writer has mentioned that successful UCB transplants have led to. So have led to means it has already happened. And this says will impact. So that's not the argument that he's trying to make here. Yeah. Okay. Then your option A is exactly opposite. It is contradictory to the writer's opinion because writer in fact supports public banks, whereas the option A supports private banks. So you would be able to only get to the correct answer if you carefully read, every single word here. This is not scan and skim. This is not reading for gist. You need to fully engage with the text. You need to understand 80% of the vocabulary within the text to be able to correctly answer the question. And you have to look at the overall summary of the paragraph. So, yes, those who have typed in their answers are right. D is the correct answer here. Public UCB banks have a valid purpose. There is a justification, both medically and socially, but it is not there for private banks. Okay? So, what did we learn is we first find out the difference between the fact and argument or opinion. Then we find out whether the argument or opinion is in favor, is it against, or sometimes it could be neutral. Then we try to summarize because the writer would tend to give his or her opinion in 2-3 different ways, maybe one sentence straight away, then through an example, or then through a quote from a popular scientist or a researcher. So you have to look for a summary of that entire paragraph. Then you go to the answer choices. So if you read answer choices before reading the paragraph, you will become completely perplexed. Never ever do that. Never read the answer choices before reading the paragraph. Always read the question first, then the paragraph, and then answer choices. So now in a similar fashion, let us look at the second question from this passage. Again, I would hide the answer choices here, so you're not distracted by it. Okay. Now look at the question. The author suggests that, so again you have to find out author's suggestion, his viewpoint about public UCB banks. About public UCB banks. Now read the paragraph, first of all, and identify where the discussion about public UCB banks is given. And then identify whether the writer, again in this paragraph, is more in favor of public UCB banks or against it. And then type F or A in the chat box. In favor? How about others? What do you think? Is the writer in favor of public banks or against them? So how do you quickly identify whether the writer is in favor or against? Is you look at the adjectives that the writer has used. For example, when I say he's a very intelligent student, he's sincere, he's brilliant. Okay, all the adjectives that I choose are kind of positive adjectives that suggest that I'm in favor. Okay, and similarly, when I say, he attends the class regularly, but I don't seem to see any progress. He's kind of dull when it comes to this skill. So the adjectives are a powerful way of conveying one's opinion about, be it a topic or a therapy or a treatment or whatsoever, or even about a person. So adjectives are a very strong way to convey your opinion. So here the writer says they are altruistic. So altruistic means someone who works for the benefits of others, someone who kind of NGO, someone who works selflessly without their selfish motive, without any selfish motive if they work. So here it says that they are comparable to volunteer bone marrow donor registries. That means they work for the benefit of people. Then the writer says in contrast. Okay. So again here you can see clearly that the writer kind of is against private banks. But the question is asking about public UCB banks. So in public, when it comes to public UCB banks, the writer is in favor. You can see all the adjectives. Altruistic, they do it for free without any, financial advantage. And then here you can see as well, been very successful in making HSCT a real option for Australian patients who require a transplant. Yes. So he could have said successful, but he said very successful. He could have said they are not selfish, but he said altruistic. So very strong positive adjectives are used here. Okay, and again here attract considerable public support and donation. So even when you look at it from the perspective of public, it's the public banks are very popular because they receive public support and they receive even financial support from the public. And then you have one argument that the writer makes. There are challenges that they face. So they are successful, they are altruistic, but they also have some challenges. Now look at the answer choices and see which answer choice correctly summarizes the writer's viewpoint. considerable, significant are stronger synonyms for important, stronger words than the word important. And whenever you're looking at answer choices, be very, very careful about negative words, extreme words, and blanket words. What are the blanket words? Words like all, everyone, always, never, ever, because they completely change the meaning. The negative words, which have clear no in it, or words like ineffective. Okay, and extreme words like too difficult to do, too small to accommodate. Okay, so now type in your answers. What do you think is which answer choice do you think correctly summarizes writer's viewpoint on public UCB banks? That's great. Everyone went for A. Right. So this is how, if you will first understand the paragraph fully, and if you will think about the summary of the paragraph, then it would be very easy for you to rule out other answer choices. But if you read the paragraph without any aim in your mind, if you just read it for sake of reading, if you just consider all the sentences as separate sentences, then it could be very confusing. You will have to go to and fro again and again from paragraph to answer choice to paragraph. And then in doing so, what would happen is you would select or finalize your answer just based on one line of the paragraph. But selecting your answer based on one line in the paragraph would not give you inferential meaning. Okay? So following this strategy would be very effective way, and it would quickly help you get the answer. So you're right. A is the correct answer. Provide satisfactory resource for transplant patients. Now see, C was a very catchy option. Significant challenges. And what happens usually, when you read the paragraph, you tend to remember the last part the most. And that is how we teacher trick you, because we know that you would not remember the initial part, but you would remember the last part the most. So here you see challenges, and here also you see challenges. And then you would think, oh, that's so easy. I could see the answer exactly within the paragraph. Right? But that's not true, because here it says make them ineffective. So it is true that they face significant challenges, but they aren't ineffective because they are very successful in making HSCT a real option. Right? So don't get trapped into this kind of tricks where the answer choice will be based on, just one sentence. Although it may look very similar, the language will be very similar to the one that is used in the paragraph. Okay. Now let us look at the next question. We are going to mainly focus on these types of questions today, understanding writer's viewpoint, because that's a significant skill that you need in order to do well in reading part C. Wait a moment. It's taking a little while to change the slide. Till then, if you are unfamiliar with any of the words, let me know. Okay, so we have got the third question here. Again, we would hide the answer choices at this stage because they can distract us. So here it says, according to the author. You see, again, this is author's opinion. Why will it be challenging to improve the ethnic diversity of stocks at public UCB banks? Now, if you see, the previous paragraph ended by saying that they face significant political and structural challenges. So definitely when you read that line, the writer would not give up there. He would now talk about challenges, right? So this entire paragraph is about the challenges faced by the public UCP banks. And you can see here, the writer starts with firstly, right? So when do we start with firstly is when, say, for example, if I was to explain treatment choices to my patient in the speaking role play, I would say, now I'm going to talk about the treatment that we are going to give you for this ulcer. Firstly, right? So always you have the topic sentence and then you will have this segments or the types of treatments, for example. So here the paragraph is directly starting with firstly, but firstly for what? So it is linked to the previous paragraph. Previous paragraph ended by saying that there are significant challenges that they face. So what is the first challenge that they face? That is given here. Collecting and storing is expensive and requires considerable and continued government support. So this is one challenge. In addition, this is a second challenge. Now look at the question here. The question is not asking you for the summary of the entire paragraph. It is rather asking you to find out why it will be challenging. What will be challenging? To improve the ethnic diversity. Can anyone define this word for me? Ethnic diversity, what does that mean? Diversity is easy. Ethnic diversity. Yeah, the cultural variation. Okay? Ethnic refers to the community or the culture you belong to. So why would it be challenging to improve the ethnic diversity of stocks? What does the stocks mean here? Stocks at public UCB banks. What does the stocks mean here? Stock of what? Stock of what? Donation? Donation of what? Donation of what? Money? Transplantation? No. Do we stock transplantation? And it's UCB. Yes. Stock of UCB. Umbilical cord blood. Yes. Not money. Because for money, you wouldn't use the word stock. You would use the word fund. Okay? And see here two separate ideas. Firstly, so there are two challenges that are discussed. One challenge is related to the finance. It says expensive and requires considerable support. There is one which is ending here. In addition, so when the word in addition comes, it means it is a new challenge that the writer is talking about. So this sentence and the rest of the paragraph has no connection whatsoever. This is a separate problem that public banks face, and this is altogether a separate problem. Now, question is not asking you anything about the financial support or the expense. It's asking specifically about the ethnic diversity of stocks. So ethnic diversity means you need the umbilical cord blood donation from different cultural groups, right? And that's what is mentioned here. In addition, so what is another challenge that they face is that there are only a limited number of collection centers. So collection centers here also refers to collection of umbilical cord blood. These tend not to be located in regional or culturally diverse areas, resulting in continued low donation. Okay? Resulting in continued low donation, and recruitment rates from ethnic minority and indigenous groups, because we already saw in the first paragraph that whenever you are trying to consider HSCT as an option, you need suitably matched donor. So it's proven that if you are choosing a donor from the same race or from the same culture, the chances of the donor matching, or the chances of compatibility are very, very high, isn't it? So that's the challenge that the public banks face. One challenge is financial. That point is over. Now we are no longer talking about the financial challenge. We are talking about the ethnic diversity. So why don't we get donation from different people, or people from different culture, or different ethnicity, is because the centers are not adequate. There are only a limited number of collection center, and they are also not located in culturally or regionally diverse areas. And then you have this sentence. Although Australian public UCB banks show significantly more ethnic diversity than their bone marrow registry counterparts. What do you mean the word counterpart? Someone who is in the same position but in a different area. So here they are talking about comparing the blood banks, the umbilical cord blood banks, with the bone marrow registry. Now, this is again a minor skill or a micro skill, I would say, that you would need to have whenever you are looking or reading and although sentence in the reading passage. Remember, the writer is trying to highlight the second half. Okay, so this is the point that the writer is trying to highlight here. Public UCB banks are still characterized by underrepresentation of some or many ethnic groups, and then there are two examples. So these three sentences tell us that it is very difficult for the public UCB banks to have ethnic diversity. Yes, that is what the question is saying. Now, question is mainly asking, why is it difficult? So one reason we have got right now, why is it difficult? Because the centers or the collection centers are not, enough, or they are not located in the culturally diverse areas. Now, the second argument the writer makes here is, given the increase in UCB transplant and the persistent underrepresentation of indigenous minorities, recruitment strategies that best meet the need of potential transplant recipients need to be developed. So considering the issue that we are going to see increase in the transplant, but at the same time there is underrepresentation of ethnic minorities, what we need to do is we need to develop recruitment strategies. Again, which recruitment strategies are we talking about? Recruitment of what is the writer mentioning here? Because the writer says this will not be a simple task. What will not be a simple task? Developing recruitment strategies that best meet the public requirement. Such policies must take account of equity concerns and specific population needs. Any idea what does the word equity mean? Have you ever heard this word before? It's definitely not equality. Would I say recruitment of staff? When it comes to recruitment of staff, why would I look for ethnic diversity? How does it matter? Right? If we talk about the staff would be probably the one who collect the blood. So why do I need ethnic diversity there in collection? Yeah, so equity, your definition of equity is correct. Equity means giving as per the requirement. Okay? Equality means giving same amount to each one of them, and equity means giving as per the requirement. So, if, say for example, if I had 5,000 rupees, and if I had to divide it amongst three students, and out of those three students, two students were already having, one student was having 3,000, the other student was having, say for example, the other student was having 1,000, and then there was another student who was having nothing at all. So what would I do is, I would give 3,000 to the one who was not having anything, and I would give 2,000 to another student who was having just 1,000, and I would not give anything to the one who was already having 3,000. So that is equity. I don't give equal amount to three of them. I give as per the need. So equity concerns means as per the requirement, you will have to develop or inaugurate more centers where the blood can be collected. And the recruitment word usually is related to staff. But here, if you think, why do we need ethnic diversity of staff? So this is not recruitment of staff, but recruitment of blood, umbilical cord blood, because you are looking for diversity. You are looking for blood, umbilical cord blood donated by different cultural groups and regional groups. Okay. So we have, if we look at the summary of this paragraph, the writer mainly says the centers are limited. There is one problem. Another problem is centers are very limited in remote, or I would say culturally diverse areas. So what would happen because of this is, you have low recruitment or low diversity in terms of umbilical cord blood. And even if we develop more centers, because now there is going to be an increase in HSCT. Okay? So with that, we need more variety, and we will have to also pay attention to equity concerns. Now we have to look for the answer choice that summarizes all of this. Which answer choice do you think summarizes all the points? Centers are limited. Centers are very limited in culturally diverse areas. So we have low recruitment rates. And as the demand of transplant increases, we need more and more diversity in the recruitment. Which answer choice do you think correctly summarizes all the points made by the writer? Do not pay attention to the first sentence, as I discussed earlier. First sentence is altogether about the financial aspect of it. Question is not asking you about the financial aspect, it is particularly asking about ethnic diversity. So try to think of a summary from this part, okay, to the end of the paragraph. The word reluctant means not willing. So can I straight away remove the option B? Because we are not looking at the financial aspect at all. We're looking at ethnic diversity. So firstly is the topic about finance. Second topic is about ethnic diversity. And in this, after in addition, there is no discussion whatsoever about the money aspect of it or the monetary part of it. So B can be straight away ruled out. Now compare A, C, and D. Again, out of these three options, one option is very easy to rule out. I've already explained that. So D may seem very catchy option. You can exactly see the word recruitment being referred to multiple times. But if you logically understand the whole issue, how does it matter? Okay, whether the staff is from culturally diverse areas or not. What you are looking for is the recruitment of umbilical cord blood. Right? So this is not true, false, not given or matching questions the way you have in reading part A. This is understanding the inferential meaning. Okay, so I have received answers from two of you. I'll still wait to get further response and then I'll start discussing it. Yeah, so reluctant, if you know the word A is um, can be ruled out because it says that it's not that the people are not willing to donate. Yeah, there's no mention about people's attitude or people's viewpoint or people's reluctance or unwillingness. It says that we don't have enough centers located in those areas. So C is the correct answer for very good. So it would only and only be possible if you understand the paragraph fully and not just understanding the paragraph as separate sentences, but looking at the paragraph as a whole single idea that is being mentioned. And make sure you add these words into your Merriam-Webster search. These are very commonly used academic words. Okay, for example, ethnic, minority, diverse, significant or significantly, underrepresentation, uh, similarly, recipients, yeah, this is very, very common. Equity, concerns, reluctant, fair, outcome is result, fair. I'm sure all of you know the meaning of fair. I don't know how to explain it. Uh, but it's something where you treat everyone equally, right? That's fair. Regional, specific to that local area is region. And characterized by is defined by. We often use this to define a disease condition, right? For example, jaundice is characterized by yellowish discoloration. Persistent is constant. Very, very important to learn all these words. Okay. Okay. Now let us move on to the next question. This time, because it happens to be the fourth question, I'm going to completely leave it up to you. so that you can practice the strategies you have learned so far. And it would also help me understand if you understand or if you are able to apply the strategies you have learned. Again, it is question about author's opinion regarding the three assumptions that underlie private UCB banking. The author, so you have to find out the author's viewpoint about what? About the three assumptions. What do you mean by assumption? Underlie, include assumptions, predictions. Right? But predictions can be slightly more based on evidence. Assumptions can be slightly less confirmative than predictions. So what is the author doing, right? Try not to get taken away by the answer choices. First, look at the question. Try to understand the writer's viewpoint. Try to get a good summary of it, and then go to the answer choices. And then type in the correct answer. So see here the introduction of starting of this paragraph itself. The writer says, in contrast to public UCB banking. Now we saw in the previous paragraph, the writer was discussing everything about the public UCB banks, how they are very successful, what are the challenges that they face. Now the writer is done with the public UCB banks. Now the writer is going to talk about private UCB banks. So here the writer says, questions have been raised about the assumptions upon which private UCB banking is based. The private UCB banking is based on some assumptions. Which are these assumptions? Here the writer has given these assumptions. And here it is given three assumptions. So first try and find out which three assumptions are given. And then what is the writer's viewpoint towards those assumptions? See if the writer is in favor of those assumptions. Is the writer against those assumptions? Or is the writer neutral about them? So this is first assumption. They will provide a valuable and appropriate resource. Valuable and appropriate resource for transplantation. Then this is second, that they cannot be collected from other sources. This is second assumption. And third is the likelihood of needing UCB stem cell is sufficiently great to justify the expense of long-term storage of UCB. So basically, what happens here is each family stores UCB, and probably if anyone in the family needs it in long term, that can be used. Now, because it is private bank, one will have to pay for it, isn't it? So expense of long-term storage of UCB is justifiable because of the possibility of needing the transplant. And then the writer says, each of these assumptions is questionable. And then the writer goes on to debunk each of the arguments. The first assumption said that it will provide valuable and appropriate resource, whereas here it says that the promise of regenerative medicine is yet to be shown in clinical trials. Yet itself has a negative connotation. Haven't they arrived yet? Haven't you submitted your assignments yet? Haven't you paid the deposit yet? Hasn't the patient arrived yet? So this kind of gives us an idea that the writer goes exactly opposite to what is given in the assumption. The assumption says appropriate and valuable. The writer says it is not yet proven. Second one says it cannot be easily collected from other resources. The writer says they often require stem cells from allogenic sources rather than from the patient, and they can be obtained from alternative sources when required. See, exactly opposite. Here it says they cannot be easily collected. The writer says they can be obtained, and you need from allogenic sources. You don't necessarily need someone who has similar genetic makeup. You need from any human being, and it can be easily collected. And third argument was that the likelihood is very high as compared to the expense. So the writer says vast majority of people will never develop a hematological malignancy or any other indication and will never require the use of. You see the language, yes, quite strong opposition to each of the assumptions, isn't it? When they use words like vast majority, never require. Otherwise, the writer could have said the chances are less that majority of the people will require, or for majority of the people, uh, the chances are very less, but will never develop, will never require. The promise is yet to be shown are quite strong words. So, is the author in favor of private banks or the assumptions that are made here? Definitely not in favor when he says each of these assumptions are questionable. So can I rule out D very clearly? Uses statistical data to support them. The writer is not supporting the assumptions at all. He is in fact questioning them. So is he questioning the evidence? No, he is questioning the assumptions themselves. And he doesn't end there. He also goes on to give justification why he thinks each of the assumptions are questionable. So which option do you think is correct? Here it says it is yet to be shown in clinical trials. So this may point out towards this. Further research is required. But it is not the summary, right? He has given 3 arguments to debunk 3 assumptions. So So option B only represents one of the assumptions. So that is also easy to rule out. Okay? And questions. This is very catchy because here also the writer says in the beginning that the questions have been raised. And here also it is saying each of these assumptions is questionable. But option C does not summarize what the writer has said in the paragraph because writer has also given the arguments why he thinks they are questionable. Right? So explains why none of them is valid. I completely understand that when you do this, in timed fashion, or when you try to do it in exactly 2 minutes time, it could be very, very difficult. But if you practice with the right strategy, the time can be managed. So that is how our course is designed. When you are in the beginners or when you are in the intermediate section, you don't need to do timed practice. You just focus on the skills. You focus that each of your answer is correct, even if it is taking you more than the required or the set time limit. Once you have understood the strategies, it wouldn't be very difficult for you to reduce the timeline. You would be definitely able to do that within the given timeline as well. Okay? So now for the next question, I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes. But make sure just because there is a timer, you are not skipping the steps. Follow the step-by-step method where you read the question first, then you go to the paragraph, you try and find out whether the writer is in favor, against, or neutral. You try to think of a good summary of the paragraph. And then you finally compare your summary with the answer choices. Taking a while. Okay. So see here also you have author's opinion, author's attitude towards the future use of UCB stencils. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes time to do this. See if the writer is in favor, against, neutral. I'm trying to decode the academic vocabulary for you. 30 seconds left. By this time, you should be able to send your answers. The time is up. Okay, yeah, that's great. B is the correct answer here because the writer does accept that, however, should UCB stem cells prove to have wider therapeutic application. So here should is a conditional statement, just like if. Should you have any queries, please contact us. Just like if you have any queries. So the writer says, if UCB stem cells prove to have wider therapeutic application, another set of different but equally serious questions will surely arise regarding the maintenance of social equity in healthcare. Then the writer goes on to give example as to how not everyone would be able to afford the cost for the storage of UC. Right? So optimistic means is very positive. No, he's not very positive. He's cautious. So he is considering that maybe it is possible that in future they will be used for therapeutic options, but we would have equity concerns, and that is the fairness issues. So you all seem to have correctly learned, and you were all able to apply the strategies, which was as a result the answers were correct. Again, a few new words here. Therapeutic application. Therapeutic refers to the treatment or therapy. Application when it is used as a therapy. Uh, then here when the writer says um, this phrase, satisfy social justice concerns. So justice here refers to giving justice to each group of the society, each um, race and each ethnic and cultural group. Threaten, pose a danger, that is threaten. Symbolic value, value are the virtues, and symbolic when something becomes a trademark, that is symbolic. Altruistic, I've already discussed this earlier. Altruistic means when it is done without any selfish purpose. Donation, donation here refers to donation of tissues and not the money. Existence, uh, presence, or to be there is to exist. Okay. Now the next question is based on the same paragraph, so you should be able to answer that in 2 minutes time because you have already read the paragraph. Let me get the question for you. So I've set the timer for 2 minutes. Again, it is author's viewpoint. What concern does the author express? Concern is worry, anxiety, and it is about a specific question. Publicly funded storage of UCB for personal use. So the use of storage from the public banks for personal use. And always remember the strategy that we have discussed. Whenever a sentence is used with while or although, that is not the major concern. The sentence that comes after comma. So for example, here, while state provided storage of all UCB for personal use may, although extremely costly, satisfy social justice concerns. So this entire sentence is not a major concern. The major concern for the writer is the sentence that comes after comma, which is this. Such a solution may also threaten the real and symbolic value attached to altruistic donation and will threaten the existence. That's 2 minutes. Now we should be able to answer your question. So although extremely costly is not a concern. Whenever a writer uses any sentence with although, though, while, even though those sentences are less of a concern. So writer says state provided storage, which means now so far the writer has been discussing against private banks, right? So he now is exploring other option. What if we don't have private banks at all? And what if we just have public banks? So state provided storage here is used as a synonymous word for public banks. Yes? So what if we don't have private banks at all and we just have public banks? Because he has mentioned in the previous sentence that not everyone would be able to afford the UCB storage. So what if we provide storage for free of cost, but then we use it for personal or family use? That means then we will be selling it. The banks will be public, there will be no private banks, so there will be no charge for storing it, but then there will be a charge for purchasing it. It will satisfy the social justice concerns because you can decide whom you charge and whom you don't charge. Okay? So you charge probably only those people who can afford it, and you don't charge those people who can't afford it, for example. So it will satisfy the social justice concerns. So that is not a problem because it is used with while. Cost is not a problem because it is used with although. So you rule out this options. The cost may outweigh the benefits and It will satisfy social justice concerns because you don't have private banks anymore. You just have public banks. So social justice is also done, right? So equality is also solved. But what would happen is the main concern that the writer is expressing here is that such a solution may threaten the real and symbolic value. This is the main concern. Remember, this is a very, very important strategy for reading part C text. Whenever a sentence is used with while or although, that's less of a concern. The major concern is the one which comes after while or although sentence. So such a solution may threaten the real and symbolic value attached to altruistic donation of tissues because everyone is donating it without any selfish purpose, right? Because it is volunteer kind of bank and it is altruistic donation. Altruistic means when you do it without any selfish purpose, when you do it for the benefit of others. But if you use that donation for sell, if you sell it, such a solution may threaten the symbolic value because how would people feel when they get to know that the donations that they are giving for free are being sold? So it will threaten the symbolic value attached to donation. And in the end, it will also threaten the existence of public banks because people would no longer see the benefit, yes, of donating tissues when they get to know that ultimately it is going to be sold out. This happens to be the most trickiest question from this passage. And with this strategy only you would be able to understand the micro skill that you need. So when I say, although he has made good progress, he's still very weak. So I'm not very, excited about the progress he has made. The main concern I have is that he is very weak. So this is how you can rule out the cost option, the social justice concerns option. These two options can be ruled out easily. Now, D is also easy to rule out because it says existence of both public and private banks. Here it says existence of public UCB banks will be threatened. So with that, you can rule out D as well because it will threaten the symbolic value attached to it. People volunteer or people donate something because they see that they are doing or working for the benefits of others. But when you get to know that the others are not going to get it for free, they are going to be charged for it, you would no longer see the benefit of donating it. Yeah. So I hope the strategies you have been able to get right. And what you are aiming for in reading part C is out of total 16 questions that you have, you should be getting somewhere around 12 questions correct. So whenever you are practicing from beginners or intermediate, this is your target. You should be able to get a minimum of 12 questions correct from a particular test. So make sure that you are practicing more such tasks today.